U.S. and China's role, if any, in Brazil's attempted coup. Dressed in the yellow and green of the Brazilian flag, protesters have demanded President Lula's election victory be overturned. Far-right supporters of Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro invaded the Supreme Court and its congressional building and surrounded the presidential palace in Brasilia. Defeated former Brazilian far-right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro fled to the United States on New Year's Eve and is currently in Florida with his former security advisor. U.S. officials, including Representative Ocasio-Cortez from New York, are demanding that the U.S. send Bolsonaro back to Brazil. On January 1, Bolsonaro lost presidential immunity. He could be jailed in any of the numerous Brazilian court cases against him, running from embezzlement to genocide. He is the Brazilian president who said in 2019 he would rather have a dead son than a gay son. Similar to what happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, when supporters of former U.S. President Trump tried to overthrow the U.S. election and invaded the U.S. Capitol in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, a mob of supporters of Brazil's far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro invaded the Supreme Court and its congressional building and surrounded the presidential palace in Brasilia. The newly elected president is Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who just started his fourth term as the Brazilian leader a week ago. Chinese President Xi Jinping's special representative, Vice President Wang Qishan, attended Lula's inauguration on January 1 in the capital city, Brasilia, along with representatives from more than 60 countries and international organizations. In his inaugural speech, Lula stressed his new government would be committed to unity and reconstruction, to resolving the current crises and challenges facing Brazil, to placing Latin America's largest country among the world's leading economies once again, and to promoting Brazil's return to the international arena. This is Lula's third presidential term. He was given another four-year mandate in general elections in October 2022, winning 60.3 million votes, or 50.9% of the total, while his predecessor Jair Bolsonaro obtained 58.2 million votes, or 49.1%. You have a right-wing pro-Chinese communist against a left-wing pro-Chinese communist, said ETN security expert Dr. Peter Tarlow. China and Russia benefited greatly from energy and agribusiness sectors contracts under the Bolsonaro government. All we hear from his cronies now is that they're fighting against communism. It's tragically hilarious. José Palazzo, Truda Palazzo and Associates, RS, Brazil, told E-Turbo News, "Gosh, impressive how people buy into these bizarre conspiracy theories. I voted for Bolsonaro in 2018, a big mistake, and did not like Lula a bit, but what's happening is an attempt to overturn the democratic regime in Brazil, simple as that." Another comment, "Right and left wings do not exist in Brazil," added Dr. Tarlow, "it is instead who can steal the most money." Lula's vice president, Dilma, a former terrorist, came close to destroying the country. In the meantime, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken said, "We condemn the attacks on Brazil's presidency, Congress, and Supreme Court today. Using violence to attack democratic institutions is always unacceptable. We join at Lula Oficial in urging an immediate end to these actions." Considering the former Brazilian president is on U.S. soil, it can be assumed there may be a lot more to the official side of this story. A significant Chinese influence in Brazil could easily become a national security threat to the United States. Here is what Wikipedia says about President Lula. Described as left-wing, Lula's first presidency, which coincided with the first pink tide in the region, was marked by the consolidation of social programs like Bolsa Familia and Fome Zero, leading Brazil to leave the UN's hunger map. During his 2 terms in office, he undertook radical reforms, leading to growth in GDP, a reduction in public debt and inflation, and helping 20 million Brazilians escape poverty. Poverty, inequality, illiteracy, unemployment, infant mortality, and child labor fell significantly while the minimum wage and average income increased, and access to school, university, and health care expanded. He played a prominent role in foreign policy, on a regional level, as part of the BRICS, and as part of global trade and environmental negotiations. Lula was considered one of the most popular politicians in Brazil's history and one of the most popular in the world while president. Numerous scandals marked his first term. After the 2010 Brazilian general election, he was succeeded by his former chief of staff, Dilma Rousseff. After his first presidency, Lula remained active in politics and began lecturing in Brazil and abroad. In 2016, he was appointed as Rousseff's chief of staff, but the Supreme Federal Court suspended the appointment. In July 2017, Lula was convicted on charges of money laundering and corruption in a controversial trial and sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. The federal judge of the case, Sergio Moro, later became Minister of Justice and Public Security in Bolsonaro's government. After an unsuccessful appeal, Lula was arrested in April 2018 and spent 580 days in jail. Lula attempted to run in the 2018 Brazilian presidential election but was disqualified under Brazil's Ficha Limpa law. In November 2019, the Supreme Federal Court ruled that incarcerations with pending appeals were unlawful, and Lula was released from prison. In March 2021, Supreme Federal Court Justice Edson Fachin ruled that Lula's convictions must be nullified because he was tried by a court that did not have proper jurisdiction over his case. Fachin's ruling, confirmed by other Supreme Court justices in April 2021, restored Lula's political rights. The Supreme Federal Court ruled later in March 2021 that Judge Moro, who oversaw his corruption trial, was biased. All of Moro's cases against Lula were annulled by 24 June 2021. Following the court ruling, Lula was legally allowed to run for president again in the 2022 elections and defeated Bolsonaro in the runoff. The incident today will present difficult choices for Lula, who took the presidency promising to unite the nation but will now be under pressure to crack down on Bolsonaro's radical supporters. It is not known what the role of the U.S. is in this, and it appears that they did not want a coup d'état but rather destruction, which seems very strange. In his inaugural speech, Lula said his new government would be committed to unity and reconstruction, to resolving the current crises and challenges facing Brazil, to placing Latin America's largest country among the world's leading economies once again, and to promoting Brazil's return to the international arena.